talk about all the free agents that they want to go after, but you need roles for them to play. You need spots in the lineup for them to play. And if Anders Lee and Brock Nelson and all these guys are looking at the roster come July 1 and there haven't been trades made, they're not going to sign here. It's that simple. They're going to need to see where they're going to play in the lineup. And they're also going to, guys like Anders Lee and all those guys are going to want to know who's getting me the puck. So there's a lot of things here, and I don't know how that can all be done in one offseason.
Agreed, man. Agreed. It's a little sad.
Remember, the Wild were last place in the Central Division.
Right.
They have a lot, and trust me, Chicago's going to make some big noise this offseason, and they still got the core that they could build around. You're still contending against a Colorado team that just added a Hobie Baker winner and is about to get the 4th overall pick in the draft. And they've got some money to spend this offseason. You're dealing with a St. Louis Blues team who's 3 wins from the Stanley Cup final. You're dealing with Winnipeg right now, who we know are loaded with superstars. And we have a Nashville team that's going to make some big, significant moves this offseason. So, and not to mention Dallas as well. So to expect that the Wild are going to suddenly, with the current lineup that got shut out 11 times this year, all of a sudden magically be fixed in an offseason, I think the Wild are in for a rude awakening if they think that. I think they've got to be realistic and come out with a long-term plan here.
Our friend John Hedges, who runs Fixology Repair, usually uses light rail to come to the live shows. We don't have light rail to Savage yet. Somebody's going to need to give him a ride. Coordinate with John Hedges to get him there. Also check out fixologyrepair.com. Locations in Minneapolis, downtown of the Skyway, 3rd floor of the Mall of America by Nordstrom's, and soon in downtown St. Paul.
There are some things in life that you just can't live without. Now, whether it's a special piece of jewelry, a watch, or even your smartphone, you want it in working condition. At Fixology Repair, we are committed to restoring your pieces so that everything works or fits the way it ought to. Watch servicing, chain repair, and broken screen replacements are just a few of the services that we offer at our 2 locations, Mall of America and the Skyway in downtown Minneapolis. Please visit us at fixologyrepair.com or at fixologymn on Twitter to learn more. Mention this ad and get a 10% discount on our services.
On Twitter,
John Hedges actually, Jim, he definitely can't come to the first show. He sent me a text that I was absolutely jealous of yesterday of him in an Irish bar in Dublin. So,
good for him.
Yeah, he's on vacation with his lovely wife, and I'm absolutely jealous. In fact, I should send him a text. So I've told the story before, right? Where last summer I was cleaning my condo, getting it ready for a showing, and at that exact moment, Paul Fenton called me, and I opened up this cabinet, and this incredible bottle of Bushmills that I bought in Northern Ireland 2 years ago smashed on my tile floor of my kitchen.
I remember that.
And so while I'm interviewing Paul during this call that lasted probably 25 minutes, I am just getting essentially drunk off the fumes of this whiskey. and the whole time I'm on the phone with Paul, I like a couple times jokingly told him about it. I'm like, one, I'm getting drunk right now, so excuse the tone of the questions. But two, I'm starting to worry about when the showing happens later, how I'm going to get, they're going to walk into the just scent of whiskey into my house. So honestly, first of all, it took me 2 hours to clean it up. Then I had to essentially get this whiskey smell out of there. Not to mention, I don't think I have to tell you that whoever looked at my place that day didn't buy it.
Well, I'm Irish, so the smell of whiskey would actually force me to buy your place.
And so, so what I wonder if John heads up to Bushmills Distillery, I got to get him to buy me this bottle. It's the color of the, it's the bottle that I love, not so much as the whiskey. Like, I was never probably going to drink it because I just absolutely love the bottle, and it's only one that you could buy there.
On Twitter from Oil Redemption, what do you think Mikko Koivu's plan is after this coming year? They should trade him to a contender and start the rebuild.
Start the rebuild? I mean, they're in a rebuild. Don't worry. Like, whether the Wild want to advertise they're in a rebuild or not, they are rebuilding the team. They traded 3 core guys off their team, and and they're gonna trade their probably 4th core 26-year-old off the team this summer. So they're in a rebuild. Whether or not you think that a rebuild is defined by getting rid of Koivu, Stahl, Parise, and Suter, that's besides the point. They're in an absolute rebuild situation here. Now, maybe they can accelerate the rebuild. That's the hope that definitely Paul Fenton and Craig Leopold hope. To get back to Koivu, what's his plans after this year? I mean, there's just zero chance the Wild are going to resign him past the season. I can't imagine any situation where they do. And so the question there, he's absolutely going to come back. He's 27 games from 1,000. He's going to be stubborn and try to get himself on the ice and that's probably the wrong term, but Mikko, he's going to work his ass off this summer to get himself ready for opening night. But you're right. If the Wild are out of a postseason spot come trade deadline time or the month before the trade deadline, and Mikko is still a very serviceable player in the NHL, I think any team in the league that's a playoff contender will try to trade for him from Paul Fenton. So that's the plan. But he will be on this team starting next season.
Cameron D. Myers asks, have you heard of a couple names the Wild are keen on in the draft?
I know. I mean, it's funny. I think Patrick Gage asked last week about whether or not the Wild would draft for need or just best player available. And Paul Fenton told me in Iowa that it will always be best player available unless it was 100% certain. Like when the example that Paul Fenton always gives is Ryan Suter in 2003. He says that's the only time in his career that he really drafted for need because they absolutely needed. Did I say 2003? Yeah, 2003. Sorry. The Nashville Predators needed a top flight defenseman. And so that's the only time in his career he's done it. But he said that unless there's a no-brainer pick, they're going to go best player available on their specific list. And I have heard that they, a couple of the defensemen in that area they do like, and I do think that they like Spencer Knight, the goaltender as well. And I would think if Spencer Knight is next on their list, they would take him. Paul Fenton has always said that those picks in a couple of years, especially a goaltender, they're going to need time to develop, and maybe eventually you either need them or you use them as a piece to go get a position of need. So, in terms of names, I think I'm sure they love the guy Caulfield. I think they love a couple of those centers on the U.S. national team, a couple of defensemen there, but that's pretty much what I'm hearing right now. In terms of their list, I'm sure it's all over the map right now. The amateur scouts met last week, and I think Paul Fenton, PJ Fenton, and Darren Yapek, who the three people that are running the draft, will continue to refine that list through the draft combine in a week and a half in Buffalo.
Thanks to our friend Tony Hoaglund, your State Farm agent. He works out of Champlin, Hoaglund. He handles my insurance and Michael's insurance.
Hey, Minnesota sports fans. This is your local State Farm agent, Tony Hoaglund. I need you all to ask yourselves this question. If you're in an at-fault car accident and you are sued for $700,000, how much of that $700,000 will my current insurance company pay? If you are unsure or can't answer all $700,000, you need to give us a call. State Farm has been number one in car insurance since World War II and number one in homeowners insurance since 1964. For a no-obligation review of your current policies, call us at 763-421-4900 or check out our website at www.champlininsurance.com.
Joe Rogers on Twitter, the way the Wild are constructed, there will need to be a couple trades to fit in any additions via UFA. Any words on teams Fenton has been talking to about trades leading up to the draft?
Yeah, no, and that is just what I've been trying to say.
Right.
Only you probably said it in a much more succinct, easier to understand way than I've been saying it. But that's exactly what your question is. What they got to do. There's just no way to go after UFAs unless they clear roster spots in trades at the draft. And maybe those trades, or hopefully those trades, especially if you're moving guys like Zucker, are actually getting younger, better players that you don't even need to go after the older veterans in free agency to begin with, which we always know is a risk when you're getting guys 29, 30 and you're signing them to long-term deals. In terms of teams that the Wild are talking to, I haven't heard anything specifically. In fact, I talked to 3 different GMs or assistant GMs this week that said that they haven't heard from the Wild yet on anything. So, look, this is the time of year where Paul Fenton just met with his pro scouts last week. And what you do there is you're pretty much going through exercises to figure out the type of players that you should go after. And then you begin those conversations, and a lot of these GMs will be together at the draft combine. So I don't think that it's anything, nerve. I don't think there's. And the other thing is Paul Fenton's headed to Slovakia for the World Championships, and a lot of GMs are there. So a lot of these conversations will happen in person, at the draft combine or at the World Championships, and then all of a sudden you start planting the seed come draft time. But, as I've speculated, I think that if Paul Fenton is smart, that he would go after some of the teams that have cap situations, Toronto, Tampa Bay, teams like that, to try to make moves. And because you got to look at those teams as being a little bit desperate, that they might have to get rid of some pretty good players.
Reminder, we'll be at Shed Tavern in Savage, 6:15 on Wednesday night. Come out and check us out, meet the owner, maybe win some wild tickets. We'll have a lot of fun. From Michael Amundsen on Twitter.
And by the way, just something that popped in my head. We were, Jim, Brandon, and I, we were talking before the show. If you have suggestions on maybe a time or days that work for you, we'd love to hear that, because obviously we want people to come down to Savage. We understand that, especially those in the north or the eastern or western burbs, it's a bit of a drive at a tough time of day. So, if we were thinking maybe we talk to the owner about pushing the time back, making it 7:15, would that be easier? Feel free to tweet us or email us and give us an idea of what would work best for you, and we'll figure it out. Good.
From Michael Amundsen on Twitter, the Bruins seem to have a championship culture. Usually that's evident throughout the organization, but the Wild have more work to do besides improving the on-ice talent.
Yeah, there's culture issues here. I think that's simple when you see guys go other places continually and succeed. So, look, that's something that Paul Fenton has identified. Trust me, and he's going to try to fix. This is, they're well aware that there's issues here that need to be changed. I think he's tried to start that process this offseason, but it's not something that just magically happens overnight. But it is funny because it's all about winning and losing. Remember at the beginning of this year when the Wild were winning, or maybe even last year, we're talking about how great the room is, how how it's fun to be. I mean, it's all about winning. But that Boston team, trust me, there's issues in that San Jose room. But guys like Joe Pavelski and Logan Couture and Joe Thornton, they keep that room together. You need strong leadership, and the Wild's room has been fractured in many different ways for a long, long time. And you look at that Boston room, and guys like Bergeron and Chara, they Krejci, these guys are true leaders. And you see it in Carolina, Justin Williams, although he lost his mind, Brad Marchand got in his head, no doubt, in this series. That stuff is important. So I do think it's beyond on-ice talent. There's no doubt about it.
From Harold Johnson, do you see the Avs moving one of their firsts, possibly for a top 4 D-man?
Yeah, I think so, although I think their blue line is so much better than it's been in the past. I mean, Girard's going to be a player. I don't think he'll ever be Jared Spurgeon. Tyson Berry's, he is one buddy. I would think that the Avalanche would be more likely this offseason than trading that 4th overall pick. I think they'd be more likely to maybe move a guy like Tyson Berry, but Berry had a good year. Johnson looks good this year, and obviously you just had a Hobey Baker winner. So this team's on the rise, and suddenly you look at this Colorado Avalanche team as, maybe the most important thing for them to do, especially now that they got Grubauer, is to figure out, what they're going to do in terms of deepening their upfront issues. It turned out to be a one-trick pony, and when all of a sudden McKinnon couldn't score, they were in deep, deep trouble in the series against San Jose. So I think that might actually be more of a need right now because it does seem to me that their blue line is much, much better. Obviously, Varlamov is probably going to be on his way out as well. So we'll see. I mean, that is another issue that we haven't written a lot about lately, just because I think it's very hard to move Devin Dubnyk, especially with no trade. But I think if the Wild could upgrade their goaltending, I think it's something that Paul Fenton would love to do. I don't think he'd ever voice that publicly because especially you never want to get into the head of your goaltender. But I do think that I could tell you that that there's a lot of goalies out there suddenly that could be on the move this summer. I'm not saying Bobrovsky. I mean, I think he's pretty much postmarked for Florida, but there are decent goalies out there, and so obviously if the Wild are going to upgrade in that position, they're going to have to figure out how to move Devin Dubnyk at some point.
We're going to keep the show tight because we're going to do a longer show when we do it live the next 2 Wednesdays at Tin Shed and Savage. So we're going to do one more Twitter question and a final thought, if Michael has one, or a final groan, whatever he prefers, from Liam C. Do you think that Fenton would prefer the team to lose out while giving young players experience this year and then pursue bigger free agents for 2021 season? The free agent crop this year seems thin. Nelson Lee probably going to be overpaid. What do you think?
No, because then he could be out next summer. I mean, honestly, if this team doesn't make substantial improvements this year, I think Paul is on the hot seat. That's just my personal opinion.